Hi, I'm Jesse Gilstrap.
And I'm Drew Cordell, and you're listening to TV Binge Drinking Mandalorian Season 2, Episode 5, Chapter 13, The Jedi. And I actually was a little more prepared to say the whole spill this time. I'm sipping on, I guess we have to be correct. We like to get names correct on this show. And so now that the child does have a name, I will refer to this as my Grogu mug. Enjoying some Starbucks holiday blend coffee. Nothing, nothing else special added. Just black coffee, but a very good, strong coffee to wake up this morning. But yes, the Grogu mug, and trying to ingrain that name into my brain now and stop calling him the child or baby Yoda or a number of other things now that, well, we've spoiled one thing already, but the one of the big revelations from this episode is his name.
So I'm once again drinking uh, another Mandalorian themed tea from the Republic of Tea, except this time it's mysterious black tea, which I don't know how many things I want to drink that are called mysterious, but I do think this is good stuff. Republic of Tea makes good quality tea. Just drinking it with a little bit of uh, milk and honey. I always like a little honey
Oh yeah.
thrown in. It's a good sweetener, but it's also just, I think, good for you, good taste. And I always do the locally
Yeah.
sourced honey. They say it's good for you to drink honey from where you're living, help with allergies and such. I don't know how accurate that is or isn't, but considering I have plenty of allergies, I will definitely give it a try if it'll help me at all with allergies. But cheers, my friend.
Cheers, cheers. Honey is just something that naturally goes with hot tea. It almost doesn't matter what flavor or
Yeah,
variety it is. Honey just kind of perfectly goes with it too.
it does.
So, with you 100% on that.
No, I almost wish, this is just me liking different flavors of things. I almost wish they had Mandalorian themed different, varieties, but besides just black and green tea. But it's good stuff, so I'm not really complaining. Nothing
Right.
wrong with just plain black tea or plain green tea. But Republic of Tea has a lot of different unique flavors, so they didn't bother even trying to come up with something
Yeah.
really unique to Mandalorian. But that's okay because the black tea is really good. The mysterious black tea. But talking about this week's episode, The Jedi, surprise, surprise, it's Ahsoka.
Right.
And, as soon as we heard the name of the episode, that stuff's kind of got out. Who directed and wrote this episode? Nothing shocking about that we finally got to this point. But of course, the episode itself, in Filoni's style, really, it doesn't beat around the bush.
No.
Gets you right to it. Straight away, you see those white lightsabers. It's like, oh, we're in this now.
Yeah.
And speaking of not beating around the bush, I'll just go ahead and say that this is an A+ episode for me again. And I kind of hate, and this is maybe a weird thing to say, it probably is, but like, I kind of hate loving episodes so much to just bring back to the past,
Right.
because I want a great standalone episode to also be a great episode of the show for me.
Right.
And this show's obviously been a good show. We've praised it plenty, but I'm just saying there's a tiny part of me that's like, I want to have a great episode that's just purely in the world of The Mandalorian.
Right.
Unique stuff that's just perfectly well told, but that's really a nitpick when we get down to it.
Yeah.
Because part of what I love about this episode is that it does tell its own story really well within the world of The Mandalorian. As you mentioned, we get to know Grogu, we get some mystery reveal.
Right.
and we get that nice connective tissue of bringing up how their relationship has been playing out,
Yeah.
the fatherly connection, the way that they've connected with one another, and bringing that into the narrative and bringing that out more, which is obviously something that a Jedi would do, is to kind of feel their connections
Right.
and define it. And obviously, Ahsoka is also very familiar with powerful Jedi, with a high ilm count, and how that might coalesce if that high ilm count person is also fearful,
Right.
kind of something that she would know very much.
Yeah.
Also, thought it was interesting to say that the directly say how the anger side of it could be brought out because of Mando. That Din Djarin is himself a violent, more volatile personality.
Right.
I just thought bringing those details out was really terrific and makes you wonder, like, where is this story going to go? Whenever we see him reach out with the Force, what side of the Force is he going to go to? That's the part of the story that I'm now even more curious in terms of how it's going to play out. It, it's become part of what the show is going to be moving forward. I think is just wondering in which side of the Force the child is going to fall down on.
Right.
Grogu, is he good or evil, light or dark? We don't really know for sure. And we've joked about how he laughs at violence,
Right.
but that could be a sign of his actual deeper personality, or what side he's falling down on.
Right.
That Din Djarin's own personality could definitely play a part in where little Grogu falls. But there's so many little things to talk about in this episode. But one of the things I was most impressed about is the fact that it's relatively sparse, but it feels so epic and alive.
Right.
But the actual production value is stellar, but relatively small.
Yeah.
You don't really see that much, and yet it's gorgeous. It's a really well executed episode from that production standpoint. It gave me some major Kill Bill vibes at points
Yeah.
where I was thinking, okay, I guess they're off to Kill Bill now, um, or Ahsoka's off to Kill Bill, one way or the other. But just a really well done episode from a production standpoint. I do want to also mention uh, Diana Lee and Asanto,
Mm-hmm.
stunt lady
Yeah.
for the most part. Morgan Elsbeth in this episode, and she was also, of the many things that she did, she was a stunt person on Rent,
Okay.
which also starred Rosario Dawson, our Ahsoka Tano in The Mandalorian. Which I do want to mention too that Ashley Eckstein obviously was kind of upset when she wasn't tasked with playing Ahsoka in live action as well, and she's great as Ahsoka throughout previous media
Right.
that we've seen her in, and that doesn't take away from what she's brought to the character. When I say that Rosario Dawson does a great job, I think, of playing Ahsoka, the more grown up Ahsoka, even more grown up Ahsoka that we have here
Right.
in The Mandalorian. It's just a perfect execution of that character, which, no surprise, Filoni would know how to tell her story. But at the same time, it's just great to see the confidence of the character, and also some really terrific action as well. But yeah, I'll pass off the buck. There's so many more things I could say. I'm curious to hear more of your take, Drew.
Well, last week we were talking about the lack of action geography, and I feel like this episode was like an immediate refresher uh,
Yeah,
on how to do that properly, because the action in this episode was not only executed brilliantly, but it was just brilliant in general. And like you said, we open up immediately with uh, some really cool scenes with Ahsoka. I mean, there's no wait for her. We get her right off the bat, and I feel like that was probably the best way to do it, to get us right there. And you mentioned Kill Bill. I definitely got some Kill Bill vibes. It just in just samurai film in general. And I've been
Right.
playing Ghost of Tsushima on PlayStation 4 lately, and there's which is largely inspired by Kurosawa films and things like that. But I particularly just was feeling that vibe watching this episode, and because there's a lot of liberating villages from the Mongols and fortresses and that kind of thing in that game. So it was very I was really feeling those vibes, and I enjoyed that immensely. I liked the magistrate. I thought it was cool to have her kind of also be a threat, and having a stunt performer like Diana Lee just be able to play the character and to have those great choreographed fights that just feel, kind of has that House of Blue Leaves, has that, Duel with Oren Ishii feel to it. I really enjoyed that scene. I loved Michael Biehn in this.
Oh yeah.
We knew he was going to be in the season. Didn't know where he was going to fall. I wasn't expecting him to be in this episode. Um, but for anyone listening who doesn't know who Michael Biehn is, he's of course Kyle Reese in The Terminator, Corporal Hicks in Aliens, and Johnny Ringo in Tombstone. Obviously, in a bunch of other films and television shows, including the Magnificent Seven TV show. Uh, but I feel like those three roles are the most relevant to his character in this, because it's like a mix of nods to those three things. Because first off, the assassin droids are known as HK-87s, and Kyle Reese talks about the HK Terminators in the original Terminator. So there's a little nod there, and then his rifle has a pump action on it, like his rifle in Aliens. And then just kind of the duel with Mando felt very Tombstone-ish uh, to me. It had those Johnny Ringo vibes, not quite, but it was just cool seeing him in Star Wars. And again, like, it doesn't feel forced. It doesn't feel like, oh, like wink, wink, we've got Michael Biehn. No, it's really cool, and they have these little nods that if you're paying attention, you can tell that they're fans of these things too. It doesn't feel like it's right in your face, but if you're looking, you can find it. But I feel like it felt very true to the story this episode was telling. I'll get mine out of the way too. This is an A+ for me, and I don't have any question that this is the best episode of the series so far. And I think that the part of it that sold it for me was, the scenes with Mando, Ahsoka, and Grogu.
Absolutely.
And there was emotional depth that we've scratched the surface of, but we haven't gotten to before. But we're actually able to delve into that and learn things that make a lot of sense to the larger story and make things click and connect. Um, I think, you know, again, without throwing it in our face, but still making it very relevant. Uh, Ahsoka talking about Anakin, but without mentioning his name directly, but just seeing the connection between Mando and Grogu and the problems. And like you mentioned, now the kind of love of violence has it's more than just a meme. It actually has some weight to it. And is it because he leans to the dark side, or is it the influence of Mando? Is it having a negative effect on him?
Because we talked about how Grogu has changed Din Djarin's attitude.
Right,
It's made him softer,
right.
but the other way around is also important.
Yeah. And it's and it's a darker, it's without being, painfully dark, but it's a dark question to raise, and I appreciate, because it's a realistic question to raise. And I really did appreciate that the questions and direction that this episode decided to explore. I as a father, you always, when you see negative things, negative attributes that your child has, like a short temper or anything like that, you really look to yourself and see, what have I done in front of my child to influence, or is this just purely from them? But you really look at yourself, and it really kind of hits home on this episode, particularly. And I'm gonna get a little personal, and I don't mean to be, and I don't want to bore people to death, but my son, he's very smart for his age, but he also is not communicating quite to the standards of his age. But he's going to some speech therapy. And Grogu, having kind of developmental traits of his own, like not being as developed in the Force as he should be, and not talking, and it just really hit home for me. And the way that episode that deals with that and lets that play out, and the scene where the test, and she sees the connection between them, and it's almost like the over nurturing of Mando, in a way, has these effects on him. And it hit home for me personally, because those are things that are very, very much in my life right now. And it was not expecting it in this episode, but it definitely kind of shot it, way high for me. I really enjoy it, and it kind of takes this relationship, puts it in a new light. I'm I'm kind of blown away by it. And just, seeing Ahsoka, like, respond almost coldly, but you know why, if you know her character. And the thing is, they make this, for people that have watched Clone Wars and Rebels, you're very much going to love this. But if you have not, this is also a good introduction to Ahsoka Tano. I feel like you're not really going to be scratching your head, like, who is this? Too long, because I feel like a lot of the gaps are kind of filled in of what you need to know. It's just like seeing Yoda for the first time. Uh, People watching Empire Strikes Back, was. And in a lot of ways, this is kind of what that felt like to me. It's not the same thing, but this planet, Corvus, kind of has a swampy feel to it. It's kind of, a woods forest planet, but it has more of a swamp feel to it, just all the fog and everything. And I, it didn't look or feel exactly like Dagobah, but it was just kind of a interesting going to find the mentor trope and an interesting take on it. And we've seen Jedi turn down training before in Star Wars. Uh, it's a it's a running theme. Initially Yoda didn't want to train Luke. The Council did not want Anakin to be trained, and Luke did not want to train Rey. And now we have Ahsoka turning down the training of Grogu because of a lot of things, but essentially the fear and anger within him that are come around the relationship between him and Din Djarin. I really, again, I really enjoyed the direction that takes us. Um, it makes Grogu an interesting character, and everybody loves Grogu uh, for being cute and adorable, but now he has more of an actual character to him, and kind of hearing her relate his backstory about Order 66 and some of those things really kind of brought him more in as a character than just the cute meme generator that he is. So I this one just feels it's very very Star Wars. This is very much a Star Wars episode. It has all these wonderful little treats that of genre mashing, because this is very much kind of a samurai western type of vibe, but it also has these deep kind of philosophical themes to it too that resonate, but also has the emotions and the sense of good and evil and just all the things that make Star Wars what it is. I praise this episode for having it at the forefront. And you're, you know, not criticism, because it wasn't a criticism. It is at the same time to say that you kind of hate that in a weird way, that that this isn't just from the merits of Mandalorian, the show's universe, that this really benefits from previously established things. And I agree too, because I wish that some of the other episodes that don't have to rely on, well, not that I feel like it has to rely, because this very much has things from this show's universe, like you said, that make it work. But it would be nice to see an episode land as well as this and the Heiress, that doesn't have like a Clone Wars or Rebels character kind of weighing the anchor. But I do agree that this is just a great episode in general. I did, like you said, the cinematography, everything looks great. It's a gorgeous episode, but it is sparse. It is kind of gloomy atmosphere, and I kind of love this planet Corvus just kind of being unique and having a different vibe to it. This episode really stands out visually too.
And isn't this the best the score has been? Or am
Yeah.
I thought it was great this episode.
Oh yeah. Definitely. I mean, I feel like he's stepped his game up immensely all season long. Like, even especially that first episode, I was like, wow, the score is even better this season. But definitely, this is the best it's been, and Just all around great. I'm loving where this is going, and I would be remiss if we didn't talk about a little plot hint or character name drop. That Ahsoka Tano is obviously hell bent on getting the whereabouts of the magistrate's boss, um, and that's the whole reason for her mission in this episode, aside from saving the villagers. And we find out that that boss is none other than Grand Admiral Thrawn, who initially appeared in the EU, one of the first, wasn't the first EU novel, but it was one of the first major releases of the Thrawn trilogy, written by Timothy Zahn, and he was an extremely popular character for decades. And when Disney took over the rights, the EU was essentially discarded, but put in, not completely though. They adapted it to Legends. It's called the Star Wars Legends canon, and they still pull from the Legends canon and adapt it to this canon, as we've talked about. And Filoni has already brought Thrawn back into the canon in Rebels. And knowing Rebels and knowing how that goes, Thrawn disappears with Ezra Bridger at the end in a fantastic finale, a great show. So it's kind of curious that he's back. I'm glad that he's back. I'm curious to what his role is going to be. I'm curious if Ezra is still alive, if that's particularly why Ahsoka is after Thrawn, or what exactly the deal is. A lot of questions, but very cool reveal. And again, like the Dark Troopers last episode, but much cooler and much more interesting, I think, in a better episode. And told in a much better way too. Like the reveal of this was just great. Um, to have Thrawn's name mentioned. Um, it's just very cool. I had unfortunately I had this spoiled for me. I didn't know how it was going to play out, but I was looking at um, Twitter unwisely, and saw things trending and saw Thrawn's name trending, and I didn't even click on it because I knew it, but I was just like, okay. I bet Thrawn is mentioned in this episode or in it or something. So that part was spoiled for me. But again, it didn't ruin this episode at all. This was a great episode, and I want to give a shout out to talking about Twitter. I want to give a shout out to some Yaddle fans because another thing that was trending was the moment that Ahsoka says that she only knows one other member of Grogu's species, and talks about Yoda. Well, a bunch of people got mad about Yaddle. Uh, from episode one, she was on the Jedi Council, and at this point was the only other creature of their species. We thought there's been people that have claimed that Grogu would end up being the child of Yoda and Yaddle and all these other things. Just a lot of speculation, but people were angry that Yaddle was not mentioned. And if you pay attention, Attack of the Clones and in Revenge of the Sith, Yaddle is no longer a member of the Jedi Council. In between those films is when Ahsoka becomes a member, a Jedi apprentice. So she would not have seen Yaddle. So it's okay. They know what they're doing. Uh, they know their Star Wars. You can calm down, but I do appreciate you Yaddle fans out there, because I myself am also a big fan of Yaddle. I was it put a smile on my face to see her on Twitter. I mean, I never thought I would see Yaddle trending on Twitter, but here we are. So just a shout out to those Yaddle stands out there.
And when it comes to Thrawn, I know I mentioned this to you in text, but I really hope that I mean, at this point, it's all but certain we're going to see him at some point. So, in live action,
Right.
how is it not going to be Lars Mikkelsen who voiced him on Rebels? Um,
Right.
and that would be so perfect. And Mikkelsen's a great actor, and obviously his brother elsewhere in Star Wars lore, but important Star Wars place.
Right.
Uh, but you know, Galen Ursa.
Yeah.
But I also really like that Timothy Zahn's been brought back in the novel world as well.
Yeah.
Uh, Continued to rewrite and further develop Thrawn into the Star Wars fold as it currently exists. And it's just been some really great stuff. So I'm definitely excited to see where that goes here because that exciting potential for all types of stuff.
Right.
And whether we're going to see Luke Skywalker at any point, which who's to say? I honestly, the more I think about that, the less I'm certain either direction on whether that's going to happen or not.
Right. I think it's a very strong possibility. Um, and I feel like it could happen. I don't think Mark Hamill would turn it down, especially if the story was good and it didn't feel like just we're gonna put Luke in this to put Luke in this. I think I think he would be willing to do it. There's, again, we've talked about this before. How much of this is going to play into the larger world of Star Wars, and how much of this is going to be its own thing? And I do think a natural step would be to have Grogu become one of Luke's first students, and that would be interesting.
It is every reason to believe that would play directly into the story we've seen
Right.
into the sequel trilogy. You know?
Yeah, and maybe Luke would reject him too. Maybe maybe Grogu is really the Dark Lord behind everything in the sequel trilogy, but they decided to delete that scene in Rise of Skywalker because Baby Yoda got so popular. They're like literally minutes before that movie came out, they're like, "Oh, cut it, cut it, cut it." So they say scrambled some footage of Palpatine and threw it out there real quick. No, um, I it really is interesting to think about where it could go. I mean, really, there are other Jedi characters
Yeah,
than just Ahsoka and Luke, but I think Luke would be the obvious choice of who would kind of reach out in this eventual story arc. But there are people on the internet, man. There are people on the internet with theories, uh, as always. And a strong one that's been going on for weeks is that Mace Windu is going to be back.
yeah.
Um,
Speaking of people who wouldn't turn this down,
People have been forcing Mace Windu into the conversation now for a long time. I mean, people
Sam
talk,
Jackson's one of them.
yeah. And why not? I mean, he was cool. He was cool. Um, but I remember people trying to say Snoke was Mace Windu. They've now, like, they've been trying to say he's alive in Mandalorian. I really don't know what we're going to get here. Um, could it be Mace Windu that ends up reaching out? Who knows? I don't know if I'd be upset about that either. Um, I think a cool possibility now is Ezra Bridger.
Yeah,
And I think that might be the route we end up going, partly because of Filoni, but also partly because I feel like that would be also a natural way to go. I think Luke or Ezra are the most natural choices. Now, where Ezra ends up in Rebels, I don't know. There would have to be a lot of explaining. In some ways, I mean, they wouldn't have to explain anything to the characters because they don't know anything about Ezra. But to the audience, there would have to be some kind of thing to make sense. But it's also true of Thrawn, and Thrawn is going obviously still around. So I don't think it's far fetched to assume that Ezra will figure into this at some point. But that's the beauty of this episode. It raised so many possibilities and questions and directions that this could possibly go, but it kind of gave us a better idea of these directions. And I feel like that's what you and I have been kind of clamoring for, is just a little more sense of direction to know where this is going. And I feel like, the last several episodes in this season, the last few, especially the Heiress, kind of gave us a peek at that. But I feel like definitely now we have kind of a better idea of what we've been watching the whole time. And I really appreciate that.
Let's think about too Luke Skywalker and Thrawn, live action Mandalorian. Holy cow.
Yeah.
Like, if that, I mean, it's not impossible that that's something we could end up getting on this show.
Well, no,
Don't know how certain that could be, but that would be really cool.
it would be nice to see Luke with that green lightsaber and it not be a flashback like in Last Jedi. Um, uh, I'm a huge fan of that lightsaber. It's a potential tattoo. I have so many potential tattoos, uh, and no actual tattoos. But one of the things I've always thought about getting is Luke's green lightsaber, the hilt and the blade like tattooed on my arm or something, because it's just one of my favorite. Well, it's my favorite lightsaber, but it's just one of my favorite like weapons from any story ever. I just love that lightsaber. So, and I enjoyed getting to see it very briefly in the Last Jedi, but I want more. I want to see younger Luke. In between Jedi and Last Jedi, and it would be cool to see him in this show. Will it happen? I don't know. It would be great if it did. I'm kind of clamoring for it now. I feel like I'm probably getting my hopes up, but I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility. Now I'm just thinking about all the Last Jedi haters. Oh, there wasn't enough green lightsaber. But that's probably the one thing I do agree with them on. But that actually is not like a criticism. That's just a stupid fan yearning that wasn't satisfied. It's not a criticism of a film. But anyway, I digress a bit, but yeah, and I want to uh, just mention I thought Rosario Dawson was very good in this. I meant to mention it earlier. I did think she was great uh, as Ahsoka in this episode, and I wasn't sure how that was going to play. I like her, but again, part of it is because I really like Ashley Eckstein. I think she did a great job, and in Clone Wars and Rebels, her voice, I kind of you know think of it. It's synonymous with her. But so just having, I think I would have felt this way with any actress, though, not just Rosario. Just the kind of wonder, okay, well, it's going to be different. I don't know how this is going to, there's makeup, there's uh, to consider. Is it going to be obvious? I think if you didn't tell anybody it was Rosario Dawson, some people would have figured it out, but maybe they wouldn't have, and they would have been focusing on just the fact that it's Ahsoka and not thought one thing about it. Because to me, that's a compliment. That was a good performance. I was not thinking the whole time like, oh, Rosario Dawson, huh? I was just like, wow, this is cool. It's awesome to see Ahsoka live action, and um, and I think she did a good job, and I hope we see a lot more of her. I really do, um, and I think we will, but who knows? Because again, this was very much a standalone episode, as much as it did advance the narrative. She's not going to be along for the ride. Uh, Probably going to have more screen time at the end of this series of Frog Lady than Ahsoka Tano. So, uh, there's no telling when we'll see her again. But I really did enjoy her in this episode.
Going back to digression, just so we can extend this episode more for no reason. Uh, I, I'm just randomly thinking about my favorite lightsaber, and I'm usually a light side guy, but I really like Dooku's lightsaber
It's
for
cool. It's
whatever
cool.
reason. That's always stood out to me.
It's my favorite Sith saber for sure.
It's got an elegance to it. I just really dig it.
That curved hilt, that's just so cool. And I had the not the force effects, but the kind of light up and sound effects one cheap, the like the $20 one from Walmart.
Yeah.
I had his, I had Mace Windu's, I had Darth Vader's. I never had Luke's green lightsaber. I had the blue. I think I had Obi-Wan's and Qui-Gon Jinn's. I had a lot of them. It's kind of ridiculous. Um, but yeah, I never had Luke's. But I did have Dooku's, and I was proud of that. I When I saw Revenge of the Sith the night it came out, a bunch of my friends and I, we brought our lightsabers to the movie and had duels with random people that we didn't know in the parking lot there in front of the Cinemark in Paducah, and it's one of those experiences I'll never forget. But yeah, Dooku's saber, that's also one of the coolest. Um, and we could probably do a whole episode about lightsabers and which ones are cool. but yeah, I do have an affinity for Dooku's as well.
I graduated high school in 2002, so Attack of the Clones came out right after my last day of high school,
Yeah.
and got in line right after my last day of high school with my friends and lightsaber duels. Had our lightsabers at graduation under our graduation robes.
Yeah.
There's actually a picture of me and my friends with lightsabers that the local photographer took for the newspaper, and I have no idea if that photo exists anywhere. I've never seen the photo.
Right.
I just know he took a picture of us dorks with lightsabers in our graduation robes. But I'd love to have that picture. I just have no idea if it ever existed anywhere.
It's weird. It's it's weird that both our high school graduations sync up with a prequel release, because I actually saw Revenge of the Sith the night before I graduated, or maybe it was 2 nights, but it was the same week. Uh, and saw it on that Wednesday night. So it would have been 2 nights before uh, I graduated. But yeah, it was a huge it was just a huge experience.
It's intimately tied to my graduation.
Right, but same here. So when we talk about the Star Wars films, that'll be fun. I know the prequels, all three of them, like their releases have special places in both our hearts because they were just such big events uh, at the time, and I really haven't seen too much come close to the feeling, the atmosphere of those movies coming out.
Getting back on point, I was just going to say that one of my favorite moments of this episode was whenever Ahsoka's doing the test and Mandalorian, our Mandalorian, gets so excited
Yeah.
and it works, and it's like, did you see that?
Yeah.
Did you see that? And I half expected him to like high five
Right.
Grogu or something. Like he was that immediately excited
Or
about.
hug him. It
Yeah,
was
one
very
way or
much.
the other.
It's very much proud of your child moment, and I love that again. Going back with my relevance to it, that also hits home. The smallest accomplishments sometimes get the biggest celebrations, and
And trying to defend him up to that point too.
right,
Like every time, like the second he's not behaving properly,
right,
well, he's stubborn. He doesn't understand you.
yeah,
Come on, give him a chance.
right,
That's really well played. I just wanted to praise Pedro Pascal
yeah, yeah,
because I really could see his personality coming out more in this episode than you always get.
right,
Really great performances all around. It's that sense of depth that really made this episode as great as it is.
yeah. I agree.
You really got a sense of character, and that's what I've been wanting because I love adventure serial stuff by every means. I love just a good, fun ride. But when you get to this episode, you really start to see that sense of character, depth, and
Yeah,
feeling start to come out. And part of what I want to see moving forward, part of what I'm anticipating isn't just, we're going to get Thrawn and what other characters are we going to see and all this stuff, which is cool, as we've discussed. But I want to know how this is going to play out for our characters.
right,
And that's exactly what you want from a story.
right.
I want to care about these people, especially from a series. A series, you really want to care about the characters and get to know their world. And that's what this episode really built to so well. What makes it an A+ episode?
Indeed.
Easily the best episode we've had so far.
Yeah,
And I say that I might like the Heiress just a hair more than you, but this still takes the cake. It's just that even greater edge has a great range of feeling and stuff going on in it.
right.
We only got 3 episodes left this season, but at the same time, it's 3 whole episodes.
Yeah,
What are we going to get? You
right.
know,
Yeah, there's no telling.
I'm excited to see it play out, though. We'll see what happens on season 2, episode 6,
Indeed.
soon enough. Pleasure as always, my friend.
Indeed. Pleasure is mine as well.
See everyone next week for more adventures of Mando and Grogu. TV Binge Drinking.